Welcome back. You're watching this edition of Kivumbi 2017, our post-election analysis. Let's switch gears a bit and talk about something that did have some significance today, because today was the 39th, Kenyans marked the 39th anniversary, that is a death anniversary of the Kenya's first president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. And even as the country commemorated the 39th anniversary of the death of the nation's founding father, the Supreme Court is dealing with a presidential poll petition whose verdict in the next 10 days is touted as a potentially most decisive dispute in the race to State House between President Uhuru Kenyatta and the opposition leader Raila Odinga. Tonight, political affairs reporter Maureen Mwangi explains what the Supreme Court battle means to the long-running political rivalry between the Kenyatta and Odinga dynasties.
On a day like today last year, President Uhuru Kenyatta, the son of founding president Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, and opposition leader Raila Odinga, the heir of Kenya's first vice president, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, shared a podium at the Holy Family Basilica in Nairobi, where they made a surprise promise to Kenyans during commemoration of the 38th anniversary of Mzee Kenyatta's death.
We should never compete again in this country to the detriment of our people or to cause bloodshed in our nation and our land.
Kenya is bigger than all of us. We will be all gone. These political competitions should not bring enmity between people.
A pledge which significantly illustrated the political sway that the two heirs of the two arguably most influential political dynasties in Kenya hold over their millions of supporters. But fast forward to a year on, and the two are locked in a bitter presidential poll petition at the Supreme Court, preceded by these violent clashes between police and Odinga's supporters. Chaos which yet again demonstrated the ugly side of the long-running competition for power between the two political dynasties, albeit through political parties that have other significant players in their caste. And now, the spotlight turns to the Supreme Court, whose verdict in the next 10 days, observers say, could dictate the future influence of the Odingas and the Kenyattas on the Kenyan political space.
Both families are very influential in Kenya. They have their pocket of followers, but the decision will simply be a setback to one or the other, but not bring a closure.
Jaramogi's dream of ascending to State House during the 1992 multi-party elections was thwarted by opposition disunity, which saw retired President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi carry the day with 1.9 million votes, followed by Ford Asili's Kenneth Matiba with 1.4 million, and Democratic Party's Mwai Kibaki with 1 million votes. Jaramogi, running on a Ford Kenya ticket, emerged fourth with 903,000 votes. Raila would inherit his father's political mantle and displace other pre-existing opposition supremos from the limelight after his father's death in 1994. But his four attempts at the presidency have flopped. But should Odinga convince the Supreme Court to nullify President Kenyatta's re-election, then the fresh polls would provide his fifth stab at the presidency and the third face-off between the heirs of the two founding dynasties in Kenya. But even then, both Odinga and Kenyatta say there's nothing personal between them or their families.
When things are very hot, we talk, he calls me, or I call him, and we get together.
Wacha sisi tulimane huko juu kwa makoti. Nyinyi muendelee na maisha jameni.
Now the Kenyattas and the Odingas have for the past 5 decades shaped the Kenyan political discourse, and the NASA petition will no doubt be closely watched within political circles as the countdown to the final verdict draws to only 10 days away. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News in Nairobi.
Thank you, Muremi. So we have seen how this has played out since the founding father, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, and the first vice president, the very leftist Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, to their sons, Raila Odinga with his fourth stab at the presidency, Uhuru Kenyatta being re-elected president. Both times, Raila Odinga disputing the presidential election results. And of course, where we are today, that petition at the Supreme Court. What does the future hold for the state of the two families, dynasties, if you will, and their influence on Kenyan politics?
Well, I wouldn't want to refer to them as dynasties. I'd like to refer to them as systems. And for students of literature, it reminds you of Romeo and Juliet, the fight between the Montagues and the Capulets. But when you go back to our independence, when Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was told by the colonial masters to take over as the president of the Republic of Kenya, he declined the offer. He said he's not ready to become president. He'd rather wait for Jomo Kenyatta to get out of prison and take over. And Jomo Kenyatta he came and he took over. So since then, we've had two centers of power, one which has been controlling the state and one which has been controlling masses. So now for the Kenyatta system, it's produced the first president, second president, third president, and fourth president. So President Moi, President Kibaki, and President Kenyatta, all of them have been part of the Kenyatta infrastructure. And anybody beginning to imagine that that influence is going to disappear from Kenya is going to have a dream. Because they've got a system, they've got an infrastructure, which is not only political, but it's also in the business space. So that the effect is going to be felt for a very long time. It's like in the US today, you feel the effect of the Kennedys, Rockefeller, and all these people, Ford, everybody. The system is going to be there. Maybe the question we need to ask ourselves, is the Kenyatta system good for the nation called Kenya? Right. And how has it assisted us? Now, when you go back to that history, when the late President Kenyatta was required to take a choice between capitalism and communism, he took the choice. He said Kenya is going to be a capitalist state. And most of our neighbors were surprised, including Tanzania. But he said that Kenya is going to be a capitalist state, and we were able to raise over most of our economies. All right. And then at that stage, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga said, we cannot become a purely capitalist state. That you can't allow just the factors of production to be harnessed by people. We need to have the government, or rather, we need to have the government coming to influence the factors of trade, the factors of supply and trade.
Hesbon, do you think Dismas is right when he says the Kenyatta's controlling state and the Odingas controlling the masses?
Well, from what I see it, this is merely coincidental. I'm not looking at it as two families or two dynasties that have been fighting, since post-independence. Because you look at the career of Raila Odinga and the career of President Uhuru Kenyatta, I mean, these are guys who worked, themselves to where they are today. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, for instance, towards the advent of multi-party democracy, after the 1992 general election, he emerged as the doyen of official opposition, even though he was number 4 in the presidential race. And you look at the people who anchored his position as the official opposition leader, Raila was not even among them. So to me, it doesn't seem like Jaramogi was foreseeing a situation where his son would actually be in a situation where they are fighting for power with
but
President
still, wouldn't you say the power of their surnames help their political
I would say that, look at President Uhuru Kenyatta, for instance. Actually, the name Kenyatta has helped him. But I think he has built his own infrastructure. Because you remember in 1997, President Uhuru Kenyatta actually lost an election to, Honorable Moses Muya, and he conceded defeat and he reinvented himself, So maybe the name helped him, but he was not, in essence, trying to propagate the Kenyatta dynasty. Same to Raila Odinga. You look at 1992, I mean, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was surrounded by, a clique of young Turks. And they were made up of, Paul Mwite, Gitobui Manyara, James Orengo, Professor Rashid Mzee, so many of them. And Raila was down there. So to the extent that these guys have built themselves, you can say that they've actually, built themselves. And it is just that these are the two big names in our political history. If you want to talk about dynasties, yes. You look at what is happening in Togo, where the system in itself has propagated the same family, the Eyadema family, to the extent that people are willing to sacrifice the constitution to have the son of a former president ascend to power. Now it is turning chaotic. And I don't think that is the same case in Kenya.
So this is not a dynasty?
It is not.
That is 54 years since, and it's the same. Kenyans are talking about the same families. What is your take, Mutinda, very quickly because
semantics
of time.
aside, it depends on what you want to mean by dynasty and stuff. But the truth of the matter is that there are scions of prominent pioneer politicians who actually founded this nation, and they worked for it. The truth of the matter is that Mzee Jomo Kenyatta worked for what he became, and Jaramogi similarly. And I also want to agree with my co-panelists that even the sons have also worked for it. But the truth of the matter is that for their sons, it has been a bit much easier than for their dads, because their dads did not have that political capital to ride on. But for their sons, they've had some political capital. Besides the hard work, the political capital, it would not have been same if it were you doing the same hard work. That is what I'm trying to say. So that's why. But there's something I want to point out. That's what I want. There's something I want to point out, or me for that matter, or any of the panelists, because we don't have that kind of political capital that comes from our fathers. But there's something I want to say. You see, there's something that is very distinct with the differences that their fathers had and the differences they have. Distinctively, the differences between the senior Kenyatta and the senior Oginga were ideological. Like my fellow panelists has put it, Kenyatta and his cronies were for capitalism, and Odinga and his cronies were for socialism. And somehow the Kenyatta side of the political divide won. But with this political competition that we have, both Uhuru and Odinga are capitalists.
All right, very
so it is about power. It is about who wins power.
This, very quickly, 30 seconds each. Where do you see these dynasties, I still insist, going? Because when you look at, just looking at President Uhuru Kenyatta and his offsprings, there's his son, Jomo. When you take a look at fairly young, obviously, not clear if he'll venture into politics, Raila Odinga. There is Rosemary Odinga, of course, who has made her political interests very well known. Do you see this as the end of the two families' direct impact, direct influence, rather, on Kenyan politics? 30 seconds only.
Yeah, 30 seconds. I said earlier on that for President Kenyatta and his system, they're being credited for capitalism in Kenya. And for Jaramogi Odinga, they're being credited for the civil liberties that we enjoy for devolution and the new constitution. But now the very new constitution that Raila Odinga pushed for, the 2010 constitution, is the one which is going to dilute the influence of these two families. And it doesn't matter the ruling of the Supreme Court case. Because from 2022, we are going to have more than two centers of power. Meaning, as Kavemba is saying, that even if you don't come from that pedigree, if you've got skills and resilience, you stand a chance of becoming a president of Kenya without the influence of those two families.
I think the cloud of these two families is probably coming to an end. Look at the emergence of very industrious politicians who have made use of, very little that they were born with to make great political careers. You look at the Deputy President, William Ruto. You look at so many governors who are emerging, and you're seeing a situation where that political influence from a family name is soon going to be a thing of the past.
All right, Mutinda?
I want to differ with them. I think we're not seeing the last of them. It might not be continuous. There might be breaks in between the current ones and the ones will come later. But for the same reason I've given, that their offspring will still have that political capital. And I believe that because some of these things run in the blood, there will still have some very good politicians from those families who, because of the advantage of the political capital that comes with the family, will still be successful in the future politics of this country.
We'll see. I'll remind you guys in this in years to come. Let's talk about one final thing as we wind up. And of course, this is what did happen in the county of Mombasa, where the governor, Hassan Ali Joho, was sworn in office today. And of course, a lot happened there with the NASA leaders declaring that electoral justice campaign. But let's listen to what the governor of Mombasa did have to say about his plans or ambitions for 2022.
For the next 5 years, with everything I have in me, to ensure prosperity of our home, I shall then return to you to seek your mandate to vie for the presidency of Kenya. I will ask the people of this great country to judge me truly by the content of my character and not along the tumultuous line of tribal divide, religion, or anything that has caused catastrophes across our country.
The oratorial Governor 001 there. I know this is still too early for 2022 politics, but I couldn't help myself. Dismas, what is your crystal ball telling you about Joho and his plans? I mean, in his second term in office, what is your crystal ball telling you?
Ben, in Kenya, running for president is never too early. As soon as the Supreme Court makes a ruling, then the election proper begins. I mean, you saw the Deputy President Ruto today going to Kirinyaga, and you remember he had very nasty remarks about Anne Waiguru, about Kizungu Mingi and catwalks, but because of political interest, he attended the launch today. But when you go to Mombasa, this is the only governor whose inauguration has been heavily attended. You've got the Raila Odinga and Musalia Mudavadi. And you have Governor Joe making a statement while the boss is seated right there that I'm running for president in 2022. And when you look at the body language, it seems to me that Raila Odinga will have no problem endorsing the candidature of maybe Musalia and Joe, or Joe and Musalia, whatever lineup it is.
All right.
Because nothing happens by accident in the political space. That's what my crystal ball is telling me.
All right. Hesbon, what is your prediction of that Joe declaration?
I think one thing we are seeing in Joe is that we are seeing a deconstruction of the political big names that we've just talked about, that he's emerging as a force to reckon with in this country. You look at his journey in politics from the by-election that he lost to Honorable Mwaboza, to the time he became the Kisauni Member of Parliament and then the governor. I think the next step, obviously, is the presidency. And the way he has marshaled himself, the way he has learned to articulate himself, I think he's in it. And the only thing we can say is that for an election, you've not won an election until you've won the next one. So for him, the next election is basically the presidency, because I don't see anything else that he can vie for. And he also has some teaching that he has received from the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who has held his hand. He's one among many, so you never know who will get the blessings. But from where I see it, he looks well poised, to get a few of Raila's blessings to go for the top seat.
Thank you, Mutinda. Joho versus Ruto.
I think I don't even want to look at it from that angle for now. But, considering that he's going for his last term, I think to me it's just a logical sequence of events that there are only two choices that he has to make. He has to decide whether he wants to go national or he goes for a smaller seat, let's say a senator, because he's been an MP in Mombasa County, and I think he's decided that he's not going to go for anything below what he already is in Mombasa, and that simply means that there is no other option other than going national. To me, that is what he's trying to do, to ensure that he remains relevant even after expiry of his second and final term. Whether he's going to be a serious contender for the presidency, time will tell, but I think there is more to being a serious contender than what he has, because I honestly don't even believe that the coastal region would fully back him. Outside Mombasa, I don't think he would have the support of... that's why I didn't want to look at it from the versus Ruto, because Ruto already has a solid base.
All right, but Ben, you didn't expect Kavemba to say anything outside that. But in my view, when you look at Joe today, in 2022, he'll be a very strong candidate for the position of a running mate.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. I wish we had more time to discuss this, but it's still too early, as you say, for 2022 politics. Thank you for joining us. I have been with political risk analyst Dismas Moko, political analyst Hesbon Owila, and Jubilee strategist Mutinda Kavemba. Thank you so much for your time, for joining us tonight. Be sure to join us tomorrow night again, same time, from 10 to 11 p.m. as we discuss and analyze some of the political and governance happenings throughout the day in our continuing coverage of a post-election analysis of this country. Of course, a big story that we are keeping an eye on, the developing one, that election petition, presidential election petition before the highest court in the land. We are waiting for the pre-trial hearings before the hearings begin proper. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Kitili. Thank you for watching, and good night from Nairobi.